Think about every being trapped somewhere, desperate and with no one to help and no way out. A harrowing feeling, isn't it? This is exactly what it's like for millions of people living in North Korea. As the most repressive country in the world, North Korea as a nation is surrounded by mystery. With strict laws, zero welfare initiatives and virtually no privacy, the country has an iron grip over its people, crushing their dreams of a better life. And that begs a question. How did North Korea transform itself into an impenetrable fortress, making it next to impossible for anyone to escape and cross over to their neighbor South Korea? Well, in today's video, we'll be uncovering a story of bravery, sheer will, and determination against tyrannical odds. When the Japanese army was forced back into retreat in 1945, the Soviet Union, present-day Russia, and the US agreed to divide the Korean peninsula in an attempt to bring some form of order and control post-war. In the same year, the US Army officers were given the task of marking the line of demarcation, splitting the territory between the Soviet Army and the US military at the 38th parallel. This splitting of the Korean peninsula wasn't meant to be long-term until the region could bounce back on its feet. However, things became even more difficult due to the Cold War, which made it even more important for both countries to maintain order and power in their respective territories in Korea. Both the US and the Soviet Union decided to delegate capable leaders to usher in an era of control and economic prosperity in both South and North Korea. The US delegated this responsibility to Syngman Rhee, who became the first leader of South Korea. The Soviets installed Kim Il-sung to lead North Korea. In the years that came up until the present, North Korea's repressive and communist policies have plunged the country into the depths of isolationism, totally cut off from the outside world. The nation has very stringent controls over the media, foreign interaction is practically absent, and the focus is strictly on optimizing the country's military strength. It is the central government that maintains tight control over the flow of information in every corner of the nation. It's impossible to access the internet and foreign media, and people are compelled to watch government-run media to get information. In addition, North Koreans don't have a lot of opportunities when it comes to international travel, and those allowed to travel are only diplomats and government officials, ministers, etc. Everyday citizens are prohibited from traveling outside the country. Moreover, it is the government that controls all economic activities within the country, as North Korea is cut off from global markets. The Korean War bolstered Kim Il-sung's political ideologies and further cemented his position as the supreme leader of North Korea. His actions and role in the war, as well as the ideal that he developed and enforced, further solidified his authority and ultimately transformed into dynastical rule, where he was the sole leader of the nation until his death, after which the leadership duties were passed on to his descendants. The brutal war also left a traumatic imprint on North Korean society, as they had to live in an oppressive and militarized culture. The government implemented a military-first policy, which is known as Songun, embedded into the everyday lives of the people. This also meant that the entire economic resources of the country went to its military-industrials complex with zero accountability. Moreover, the devastation and famine as an aftermath of the war required considerable reconstruction efforts. The government did play a significant role here. However, the regime implemented and encouraged a tilt towards self-sufficiency, which is known as the Juche ideology. The country shunned any external help. After Kim Il-sung's passing, Kim Jong Un came into power in 2011 at just 29 years old. In his rise to power as the supreme leader, a lot of people expressed a glimmer of hope that the new regime would bring some modicum of change and that Kim Jong Un might just help them acquire a better quality of life. After all, Kim Jong Un did talk about implementing generational change and reform. He was a well-educated individual and had international exposure. However, the great successor, whose label was given to him by the regime, turned out to follow in the same footsteps as his father. His regime turned out to be more brutal than his predecessors. Under Kim Jong-un, the central government was greenlit to test nuclear weapon capabilities, and the country began manufacturing thermonuclear weapons as well as ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, that could strike and devastate most parts of the US, which also led to the US fearing a nuclear attack from North Korea in 2017. In addition, the current supreme leader was able to make quick work of several top officials who even mildly smelled of dissent, purging a lot of government and military officials. He also had his uncle, Jang Song-taek, executed in 2013, along with Yong Yong-chol, Minister of Defense, in 2050. North Korea is amongst the most oppressive and restrictive countries in the world. The central government holds all the power. There's no democracy, and all matters, both political and civil, are managed and overseen by the regime. The people are told what to say and how to act. There's no freedom of expression, religion, and association. This is why from 2013 to 2017, the United Nations kept on bringing the country's brutal human rights violations to light, docking it access to its formal agenda. The situation is quite grim for the North Koreans. They aren't allowed to leave the country without express permission, which is seldom given, if ever. There are heavy-handed restrictions in place to make it impossible for people to leave the country illegally. And if someone is caught crossing the border illegally, they're imprisoned for up to 5 years without due process. They may also face torture and may even be ordered to work in mines as forced labor. Moreover, citizens who are permitted to leave the country, such as politicians, military officials, athletes, etc., are closely monitored throughout their travel and undergo ideological debriefs as soon as they return to their country. North Korea is a massive police state, with an unfathomable number of undercover police and intelligence informers everywhere. This network is responsible for reporting and communicating any criminal and subversive behavior to the necessary authorities. It's not far-fetched to say that all citizens in North Korea are monitored and surveilled to one degree or another. There's also internal surveillance carried out where individuals are tracked to uncover any criminal activity or any behavior that goes against the doctrines of the supreme leader. In addition, the police and intelligence agencies also routinely recruit ordinary citizens to do their bidding, often receiving rewards in the form of food rations, reduced sentences and/or punishments, etc., to report on their neighbors and the people around them. On the other hand, the people who fail to report any illegal activity can find themselves in hot waters and are given severe punishments. Phone calls, emails, etc. are all tracked and monitored to prevent anybody from leaking information to the outside world. There's virtually no privacy in North Korea. It's very important to understand that the Korean War ended up in a sort of stalemate. It was ended due to a peace treaty and there wasn't a single victor. This means that to this very day both South Korea and North Korea are practically at war. Due to the technical conflict, both sides have deep-rooted trust issues, which was ever more heightened when the US got involved and stationed thousands of troops in South Korea. In addition, North Korea practices complete self-sufficiency and self-reliance, and focuses on continually increasing its military might with an iron grip on media control. These are all communist-based ideologies that clash with the ideologies of democracy in both Japan and South Korea, which is what leads to further divide and mistrust amongst the nations. Another reason why North Korea is practically cut off from a majority of countries throughout the world is its continued insistence on enriching its nuclear power and testing ballistic missiles, all of which is a big point of contention amongst the neighboring countries. Plus, there are a wide variety of sanctions against North Korea which pretty much forbids other nations to trade or get involved with the nation at any level. Since 2006, the United Nations have plastered North Korea with up to 9 different international sanctions owing to the repressive country's blatant disregard for basic humanitarian laws, as well as its thirst for testing nuclear weapons. These sanctions have played a major role in completely isolating North Korea from the international economy, making it impossible for the country to trade with both developed and developing nations across the globe. Thus, the nations don't have any way to access foreign goods and services, investment and technology. However, the impact of these sanctions has also made life infinitely more difficult for the local population who can't get access to aid or any outside help. The sanctions have practically made it impossible for UN international aid programs to reach destitute North Koreans who are in constant peril. North Koreans are especially vulnerable due to constant food shortages, devastation caused by natural disasters, and appalling healthcare. After the Korean War supposedly ended, North Korea heavily invested in fortifying its border with its neighbor in an attempt to curb any sort of infiltration and prevent its citizens from illegally immigrating to South Korea. In the early 80s, the country began to further implement stringent border control measures, creating huge fences along the Yalu River to prevent people from crossing over to China. Presently, due to the advancement in technology and innovation, the country has implemented more digitized measures, such as electronic surveillance cameras and motion sensors in a variety of important areas along the South Korean border, making it even more difficult for people to defect and cross without detection. North Korea has been heavily investing in employing more advanced monitoring and surveillance technologies, including drones, facial recognition systems, and motion sensors. They've established an aerial monitoring system with cutting-edge capabilities and heat-based tracking to track and capture defectors and people trying to flee to South Korea. The drones allow the authorities to keep an eye on the border in real time and continuously gather live intelligence, which they convey to their ground forces. In addition, the central government has also implemented the use of motion, infrared, and acoustic sensors to further make it difficult for people to cross over. These sensors are very carefully placed throughout key areas and can instantly pick up any form of movement, be it footsteps or any other type of activity near the border, making it harder for people to run or hide. There are even reports that the government has also placed several mines across different locations near the South Korean border. North Korea's complete control over media makes it a powerful propaganda machine, effectively disseminating disseminating information in line with its political doctrine and statewide ideology, which primarily includes the principles of self-reliance, juche. The media constantly bombards its citizens with the Kim family's cult personality, enforcing ideologies that compel people to entrust their loyalties to the supreme leader. The media is largely used to control and reinforce these ideologies, thereby effectively keeping the population in line. It is also impossible for ordinary North Koreans to get any information from the outside world because of the strict information monitoring and lack of internet. All print and electronic content and the narrative within is generated by the central government, while any shred of outside information inflow is intercepted and suppressed. Moreover, North Korean media has also portrayed the outside world as corrupt and dangerous, falsely leading the people to believe that there is nobody who can help them or intervene. This helps the regime discourage any form of dissent while simultaneously injecting fear. Dissenters and people who attempt to flee the country illegally are met with a grim fate. North Korea has a particularly gruesome political prison system known as kwanliso, which are prison camps that subject prisoners to very harsh conditions and forced labor, and a lot of people have died under various circumstances. In other cases, people caught disobeying or besmirching North Korean law are often publicly executed. This may also involve dissenters and people caught attempting to cross over to South Korea. Other forms of brutal punishments also involve subjecting the dissenter's family to torture and prison camps. North Korea is notorious for operating a string of political prison camps where dissenters and criminals are thrown in without any due process. Even if the authorities feel that an individual may be disloyal, they are immediately incarcerated without question. The conditions in these labor and prison camps are absolutely brutal, with several reports citing that the prisoners are subjected to torture and starvation. Forced labor is also quite common in North Korea, with people working under backbreaking conditions at dismal wages. In addition, the regime also has implemented a caste system, which is known as songbun, which essentially assigns individuals their role in society based on their perceived loyalty to the supreme leader. People who rank low in this system are subjected to cruelty and discrimination, and are not offered equal employment opportunities. In all, North Korea undoubtedly serves as an eye-opening reminder of just how brutal and repressive the nation can be. With ordinary people suffering left, right and center, they're subjected to inhumane conditions, are regularly abused, and are kept isolated from the rest of the world. The suffering of these people will always remain a worldwide concern that calls for immediate global attention and advocacy.